The road narrowed the deeper she drove, curling between walls of skeletal trees that seemed to lean toward her headlights, as though listening. Mara tightened her grip on the steering wheel and slowed to a crawl. The asphalt here was cracked, slick with moss, and the forest pressed in so tightly that she couldn't tell where the branches ended and the night began. She hadn't seen another car in nearly 2 hours. Just her, the dark, and the thought of what waited for her at the end of this road. A house she hadn't set foot in since she was 8 years old. When the lawyer called last month, his tone flat and businesslike, she'd almost hung up. Ms. Reeves? I'm calling to inform you that you've inherited your uncle's property in Graybrook. Do you wish to claim it? Her first instinct had been to say no. She hadn't thought of Graybrook in years. Not since the fire, not since the screams, not since the smell of charred wood clung to her hair for weeks, no matter how many times her mother washed it. But he'd insisted the house was legally hers now, a matter of paperwork. Now here she was, chasing down paperwork at the edge of nowhere. The GPS on her phone stuttered and went black 10 minutes back. And even though she'd charged it that morning, it refused to turn on again. The silence inside the car pressed against her eardrums, and when she glanced in the rearview mirror, the forest behind seemed to breathe. Just for a second, the shadows between the trees shifted, like something ducking out of sight. Her pulse fluttered. She shook it off. Jesus, Mara, you're tired, that's all. But her body knew this road, even if her mind wanted to forget. The last stretch came back in fragments, the cracked milestone marked with gray lichen, the old rusted sign warning of deer crossings, the way the trees seemed to peel away to reveal. There. She almost missed the turn, a crooked lane of gravel half swallowed by weeds. She braked hard, the tires skidding. Gravel popped under the car as she rolled into the lane. The headlights swept across the gate. She expected chains, maybe a padlock, but the iron gates stood wide open. That should have been a relief, yet the sight chilled her worse than if they'd been closed. Someone had been here. The house rose out of the dark like something dredged. From memory, 3 stories of blackened brick, the roof hunched like a broken back. Windows like blind eyes glared across the overgrown yard. One of the shutters banged loose in the wind, a slow, uneven clack. 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 Mara parked at the edge of the drive and killed the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, hands still, clutching the wheel. The silence after the engine's death was deafening. You don't have to go in, a small voice told her. But of course she did. The smell hit her first. Damp wood, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Rust, maybe, or old. Blood. She tugged her duffel bag from the back seat, slung it over her shoulder, and started up the front steps. The boards groaned beneath her weight. Each creak echoed too loudly, like the house was listening. She reached for the door handle. Cold. Metal, unlocked. She froze, breath caught in her throat. She'd expected resistance, something to force entry into. Instead, the door swung inward with a sigh, like it had been waiting for her. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom. Dust swam in the air like drifting ash. The entry hall stretched ahead, its wallpaper peeled and stained, the chandelier above, strung with cobwebs. She stepped inside. The sound of the door closing behind her was soft. Too soft. She hadn't touched it. Mara's chest tightened. Old houses breathe, she whispered to herself, the same phrase her mother used to mutter when the floorboards groaned or windows rattled in the night. They settle, that's all. She flicked her flashlight left. A staircase rose into shadow, the banister thick with grime. To the right, a corridor disappeared into blackness. She could almost hear her uncle's voice echoing from the kitchen. At the end, though he'd been dead for over 20 years, her footsteps left little prints in the film of dust on the floor. But then, halfway across the hall, she stopped. Another set of prints stretched ahead of hers, smaller, bare feet, the toes pointing toward the staircase. Her throat went dry. She climbed the stairs anyway. She told herself she was imagining it, that maybe they were her own prints doubled by the flashlight. But the air on the second floor was colder, heavier, and when she turned down the hallway, She knew she wasn't imagining the smell. Rot. Sweet. Cloying. Unmistakable. She swallowed, hard, and pushed forward, her beam skimming over the warped floorboards, the doors lining the hall like crooked teeth. Each room whispered fragments of memory, her mother's voice hissing at her to stay downstairs, her uncle laughing too loudly, the sudden smell of smoke one night she'd never forgotten. At the very end of the hall, the door to the attic stairwell hung slightly ajar. The footprints stopped there, her chest hammered. She knew she should leave, that she had no obligation to explore further, no reason to follow. But something about the open door was magnetic, a pull in her gut. Her hand trembled as she pushed it open. The stairs rose into blackness, steep and narrow, the air thick with the stench of mold. She raised her flashlight and climbed, each step moaning under her. Her breath came shallow, each exhale clouding in the cold. At the top, the attic opened into a wide, low space, broken furniture hunched in the corners. A trunk sat in the center, its lid slightly raised. Mara's light caught on something pale protruding from the gap. Her stomach lurched. A child's hand, small, still. She staggered back, choking on bile, but before she could turn, the hand twitched. Fingers curled, the trunk lid slammed shut. Mara fled. She bolted down the stairs, her flashlight beam jerking wildly, breath ragged. She burst back into the hall and stopped dead. The dust prints were gone. Her own were gone too. The hallway floor stretched pristine before her, as if she'd never walked there at all. A sound drifted from behind her, from the attic. A voice. High, thin, childish. Mara. The syllables stretched like the word was being pulled apart. Her knees almost buckled. She stumbled down the stairs, across the entry hall, and shoved at the front door. It didn't budge. She yanked harder. Nothing. The door was locked. No, not locked. Sealed. She turned, chest heaving, and the chandelier above her swayed though there was no wind. Shadows bled along the walls, darker than they should have been, twisting shapes she couldn't name. And underneath it all, she heard it. A heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic. Coming not from her, but from the house itself. Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat on the bottom step of the staircase, her flashlight trained on the door, duffel clutched in her lap like a shield. Every hour the house groaned, as though it were shifting in its sleep. Sometimes she thought she heard breathing. Once, she swore she felt warm air brush her neck. At dawn, the door opened on its own. Just a soft click, a sigh of hinges, and the world outside spilled in. Her bag was still clutched tight to her chest. Her hands shook as she stood and stepped into the daylight. But the strange thing, the thing that froze her blood, was the yard. It wasn't overgrown anymore. The weeds were gone, the grass trimmed neat, the path swept clean, and on the porch, rail resting in a small, careful line, were 4 child-sized handprints in dust. Mara didn't remember climbing into the car. She didn't remember turning the key, or the crunch of gravel as the tires rolled her down the lane. All she remembered was the house, and the handprints, and the suffocating certainty that if she lingered another second, the place would not let her leave again. The town appeared suddenly after miles of empty road, like it had sprouted overnight just to catch her. Graybrook hadn't changed. The same squat brick buildings, the same leaning church steeple, the same rows of shuttered shops with paint flaking off their signs. Yet the quiet was heavier, more deliberate, like the town itself had grown weary of pretending it wasn't dead. She parked outside the diner. The neon sign above it buzzed weakly, letters half dead, but it was the only building that looked remotely alive. Mara shoved her duffel onto her shoulder and stepped inside. The smell hit her. Frying grease, coffee gone sour from sitting on the burner too long, a trace of bleach. Familiar, almost comforting. But the moment her boots touched the linoleum floor, every head turned. There weren't many people. 3 old men hunched over mugs, a waitress leaning on the counter, a boy fiddling with a crossword. Still, their gazes pinned her in place, curious, sharp. Then, just as quickly, they turned, back to their routines, as if in rehearsed unison. Mara slid into a booth by the window. Her hands shook as she pulled the menu toward her, though she didn't read it. The waitress came over, pad in hand. Her hair was pulled back too tight, face pale, eyes shadowed with something that wasn't just fatigue. "Coffee?" "Yes," Mara said. Her voice came out hoarse. "Please." The woman nodded, poured from the pot at her hip, and lingered a moment too long, studying her. "Haven't seen you here before." Mara forced a tight smile. "I'm just passing through." The waitress didn't answer. She just set the cup down and walked away. Mara wrapped both hands around the mug, though it burned her palms. She needed the heat, something real, something that proved she was awake. Her reflection wavered in the black surface. Her eyes ringed dark, her lips cracked. She looked like someone already haunted. The bell over the door jingled. Mara didn't look up until she heard boots stop at her table. A man stood there, mid-40s, lean and broad-shouldered, with a sheriff's badge glinting on his chest. His eyes were the color of storm clouds. "You're Mara Reeves," he said, not asked. She blinked. "Do I know you?" He didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted to her duffel bag, then back to her face. "Name's Sheriff Dalton. Word travels quick in a place like this." He slid into the booth across from her without invitation. "You went up to the Reeves place last night." Her stomach clenched. "How? People see things." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't have gone there." Mara swallowed. The bitter coffee turned to ash on her tongue. "It's mine now. I inherited it." "That house doesn't belong to you," Dalton said flatly. "It doesn't belong to anyone." The word sent a shiver down her spine. He must have seen it. His tone softened. "Listen, whatever you think you're going to find up there, answers, closure, you won't. All you'll get is lost." Mara's nails bit into the ceramic mug. She thought of the attic trunk, the hand, the voice. There was something. She stopped herself. The whole diner seemed to be listening, though no one had turned their head. Dalton's jaw tightened. "If you're smart, you'll leave town. Today." He stood. "Don't go back there." And then he was gone. Boots echoing against the tile, the bell over the door ringing sharp. Mara stared after him, her heart thudding. But she couldn't leave. Not yet. Something in the house had reached for her, called her by name. She couldn't shake the certainty that whatever lived in those walls had been waiting. For her specifically. She spent the afternoon drifting through town, trying to shake the eyes she felt on her. Every shopkeeper glanced too long. Conversations halted when she walked past. A dog growled low from a porch until its owner yanked it inside. By evening, she found herself back on the gravel lane. She told herself she only wanted to grab a few things she'd left behind, documents the lawyer would need. But in her chest, she knew better. The gates yawned open as before. The house loomed, darker now in the dim light, its windows glinting like wet eyes. She stepped inside. The smell hadn't changed. Mold, rot, smoke. The air clung to her skin, damp and cold. But something else had changed. The dust on the floor was gone, completely. The wood gleamed faintly, as if freshly polished. The chandelier above no longer hung with cobwebs. A faint hum vibrated through the walls, like a throat clearing in the dark. Her heart pounded. "Mara." The voice slithered down the staircase. She spun, flashlight beam slicing across the rail. Empty. But the sound had been real, so close it brushed her ear. Her breath came fast. She forced herself toward the kitchen, her boots tapping against clean. The smell there was stronger, acrid. The table was set. 4 plates, 4 glasses, silverware, gleaming as though someone had polished it minutes ago. But the plates weren't empty. Meat lay there, thick and raw, blood pooling dark around the edges. Flies buzzed lazily above it. Mara gagged, covering her mouth. On the far wall, words had been scrawled in something that looked like soot. She raised her light, stomach dropping as she read them. "You came back." Her knees nearly buckled. She stumbled backward, heart slamming, and her shoulder clipped the doorframe. The sound it made echoed too loud, bouncing through the house until it felt like the walls themselves laughed. She fled the kitchen, but every room twisted against her. The study's shelves were lined with books that whispered as she passed. The parlor's cracked mirror reflected not her face but the blurred outline of a child standing beside her. She broke into a run, breath ragged, and clawed her way up the staircase. Maybe if she could see the attic in daylight, prove the trunk was empty. But when she shoved the attic door open, the room was gone. Not empty. Gone. Instead of a low ceiling and broken furniture, she stood at the edge of something vast. A cavern. Of black, stretching endless, swallowing the beam of her flashlight. The hum she'd felt below vibrated louder here, like a pulse through stone. And there, shapes moved in the dark, crawling, writhing, children. Dozens of them, their skin gray, their eyes hollow. They crawled on all fours, spines arched, fingernails scraping. Some had no mouths, just smooth flesh where lips should be. Others opened their jaws too wide, splitting their faces, showing teeth like splintered glass. They whispered her name, in unison. Mara. Her body locked. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then the floor shifted beneath her feet. Not creaked, shifted, like the boards themselves had pulsed. She stumbled backward, hit the wall, and the attic door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed her. She screamed, fists pounding the wood. The whispers rose, layered over each other, filling her head until she thought her skull would crack. And then, all at once, silence. The door creaked open behind her. She fell backward, tumbling into the hallway. The attic was a room again. Dust, broken furniture, the trunk in the center. Closed. Her flashlight sputtered and died. Mara ran blind. Down the stairs, across the hall, into the night. She didn't stop until she reached her car, chest heaving, lungs burning. Her hands fumbled. The keys. The engine refused to start. Headlights flickered once, twice, then died. She sat there, heart a drum in her ears, staring at the house through the windshield. And in the upstairs window, a figure stood. Small. Child-shaped. Watching. Mara didn't sleep. She sat rigid in the car until dawn painted the horizon. Only then did the engine turn over, smooth and easy, as though nothing had been wrong. She drove back into town, desperate for answers. The sheriff wasn't at his office. The diner's waitress refused to meet her eyes. When Mara pressed, the woman only muttered, "Don't feed it, don't listen," before retreating into the kitchen. Finally, an old man by the church fence caught her arm. His skin was paper thin, his eyes clouded, but his grip was iron. "You shouldn't have gone there," he rasped. Mara swallowed hard. "What is it? That house, what is it?" He shook his head. Not a house, never was. That place was hollow, before it was built. Hollow and hungry. The Reeves thought they could fill it, but it filled them instead. Her blood ran cold. Filled them? The old man's mouth twisted. "It takes pieces, little by little, till you're nothing but dust on the floorboards." Mara staggered back, his words sinking like stones into her chest. Her uncle's voice echoed again, memory she couldn't shake. Families stick together, blood remembers blood, and suddenly she understood. The house hadn't called to just anyone. It had called to her, because she belonged to it, because blood remembers. Mara didn't remember the drive back. One moment she was standing in Graybrook's churchyard, the old man's words gnawing at her, and the next she was pulling up the gravel lane again, the house rising in the distance like it had been waiting. All along, the gates hadn't moved. Still yawning wide, the morning sun should have made things better, safer. But in daylight, the house seemed worse. Its blackened brick pulsed faintly with moisture, its roof sagging under invisible weight. And the windows weren't blind anymore. They gleamed, slick and wet, as though something behind them pressed too close to the glass. Watching her, her body screamed to turn around, to run until Graybrook was nothing but a dot in the rearview mirror. But she couldn't. She knew it now. This wasn't about paperwork or property. It was about her blood, Her family hadn't escaped this place. They'd just delayed it. Mara forced herself up the steps, each board moaning under her boots. The front door gave way with no resistance, opening like a mouth. Inside, the house was alive, no longer a ruin, no longer layered in dust. The wallpaper gleamed fresh pale blue with silver stripes. The chandelier dripped crystal light. The smell of rot had been replaced by something worse. Sweetness, thick and cloying, like overripe fruit left to liquefy in the sun. Voices murmured through the halls. Low, unintelligible. A conversation happening in rooms that shouldn't exist. Mara's throat burned. She gripped her flashlight, though she knew light wouldn't matter. Why me? She whispered, though her voice cracked. And the house answered. Because you came back. The words weren't spoken aloud. They bloomed inside her skull, swelling until she staggered against the banister. The chandelier flared, casting shadows across the hall. Shadows that didn't match the furniture. Shadows shaped like children, dozens of them, all clustered at the base of the stairs. They didn't move. Didn't blink, just stared. Mara forced herself forward, boots tapping sharp against gleaming floor. Each step brought her closer to the kitchen, to the soot-scrawled words she'd seen the night before. The wall was clean now, no soot, no blood. But the table was still set, 4 plates, each piled high. The raw meat was gone, replaced with steaming roasts, bowls of potatoes, fresh bread. It looked real, smelled real. But the flies were still there, buzzing thick, landing on the food like they'd been waiting. She gagged and stumbled back, straight into something solid, hands closed around her shoulders. Mara screamed and spun. Her uncle stood there, not as she remembered him in life, broad and ruddy-cheeked but gaunt, his skin stretched paper-thin over bone, eyes black pits. His mouth split in a grin too wide, teeth yellow and broken. "You're home," he rasped. His breath stank of smoke. Mara shoved past him, bolting. Through the parlor. Mirrors lined the walls now, each reflecting her face, but not her alone. In every reflection, children clung to her arms, her legs, their mouths pressed to her skin like leeches. Their faces blurred, eyeless. She smashed the nearest mirror with her flashlight. The glass shattered, raining down, but the shards didn't fall. They hovered in the air, glinting like knives before twisting to face her. Mara ducked as one slashed across her shoulder, burning hot. She scrambled into the hall, blood soaking her sleeve. The staircase loomed. She didn't want to go up, but her body moved anyway, dragged by a force she couldn't fight. Each step seemed to throb, a heartbeat beneath her boots. The attic door waited. Closed. Her hand rose without her command. Turn the knob. The attic was vast again. No ceiling, no walls. Just endless black. The shapes writhed in the dark, children crawling closer, their whispers building into a chant. Mara, Mara, Mara. She stumbled back, but the door sealed, shut behind her. The floor dissolved beneath her feet. She fell, not down, but inward. The dark swallowed her whole, pressing against her chest, her face, her lungs. She screamed, but no sound escaped. Her body twisted, pulled in every direction. The whispers burrowed deeper, no longer outside but inside, voices curling through her veins. Blood remembers blood. Her uncle's voice again, but louder, booming. Shapes emerged from the dark. Her mother's face, hollow-eyed, mouthing silent apologies. Her father's hand, reaching, then shriveling into bone. Mara clawed at her skin, desperate to peel them out, to rip the memories free. But the dark only pressed tighter, forcing her deeper. And then, light. She stood in a dining room, but not as it was now. This was the past. Wallpaper bright, chandeliers glowing, silverware polished. Her family gathered around the table, her uncle at the head, her mother stiff beside him, her father pale and sweating. And herself, 8 years old. The child Mara sat small in her chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. But her eyes, God, her eyes. Black endless, The child turned to look at her, lips stretching into a smile too wide. "You never left," it said. Mara staggered back. "No, no, that's not me." But the child laughed, not cruel, joyful, like a bell. The sound scraped her bones raw. "You've always been here, waiting to come back." The scene shattered. Mara collapsed onto splintered boards, the real attic around her again. The trunk sat in the center, lid half open. The hand protruded once more. Small, pale. This time, Mara crawled toward it. Her body shook, but she couldn't stop. She reached out, fingers brushing cold skin. The lid slammed shut. Pain ripped through her chest, like claws tearing from the inside. She screamed, crumpling, clutching at herself. Her veins burned, her skin crawling. Shadows poured from the trunk, wrapping around her arms, her throat. The children emerged, crawling across the floor, their whispers deafening. They swarmed over her, clawing, gnashing, pressing their hollow faces against hers. She thrashed, kicked, but every strike sank into nothing. Their weight pressed her down until she could barely breathe. Her uncle's voice thundered above them all. "Blood remembers blood, and blood feeds blood." The attic pulsed. The boards beneath her writhed like flesh. The trunk yawned wide, darkness spilling out. She felt herself dragged, inch by inch, toward its mouth. "No!" she screamed, nails tearing against the boards. "I'm not yours." But her hands slipped, the shadows pulled, and then silence. The children froze. The shadows recoiled. The attic stilled. Mara blinked through tears. A figure stood across the room. The old man from the churchyard. His cane dug into the boards, his frame bent, but his eyes sharp. "You can fight it," he rasped. His voice shook, but it cut through, the whispers like a blade. "It wants you to give in. Don't." Mara's chest heaved, the shadows coiled, ready to strike again. She forced herself upright, every muscle screaming. She thought of her mother dragging her through smoke, her father's tired smile, the life she'd built far away. "I am not yours," she hissed. "I don't belong here." The shadows shrieked. The trunk slammed shut. The attic shuddered. Boards splintering. Light split the ceiling, blinding white. The children screamed, their forms twisting, unraveling like smoke. The house groaned, walls buckling, roof sagging. Mara ran. She didn't look back. Down the stairs, through the hall, out the door as the house wailed behind her. The ground split, swallowing brick and wood. The chandelier crashed, windows burst, the entire structure collapsing inward like a throat closing. She stumbled into the yard, falling hard onto damp grass. The air filled with dust and screams, until, all at once, silence dropped. When she looked up, the house was gone. Nothing remained but a crater of black earth, pulsing faintly, as though something beneath still breathed. The old man stood at the edge, cane trembling. His eyes met hers. "You bought yourself time," he said. "But it never ends, not until blood runs dry." Mara staggered to her feet, throat raw. "What do I do?" His gaze dropped to the crater. "You leave, and you don't come back. Pray, the hollowing doesn't follow." He turned, shuffling toward the road. Mara stared at the pit. The earth throbbed. The air smelled of rot. She thought of the children's whispers, the trunk, the reflection of herself with black eyes. She knew the truth. The hollowing wasn't gone. It was inside her now.